Hello and welcome to a very special, very family-oriented episode of Hardfire. Tonight I have a very special guest, and I'm going to introduce both myself and my guest, and you can try to figure out what are the similarities. My name is Dr. Phil Maymin. I was the 2006 Libertarian candidate for Congress from Connecticut's 4th District. I'm the Yankee Institute. I'm a policy scholar for the Yankee Institute, and I'm the author of Yankee Wake Up, a collection of libertarian essays. My guest is Dr. Zak Maymin. He is a former professor, a Wall Street quant, a hedge fund manager, and the author of a new book, Publicani, by Zak Maymin. Now, if you guessed that the relationship between us was that we are brothers, then you have paid us both an excellent compliment. Thank you very much. In fact, Zak is my dad, and thank you very much for being here today. Thank you for the ride down. I can honestly say if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here either genetically or geographically. So welcome to the program, and let's talk about your book, Publicani. It's an interesting. Usually the first question about a book is, well, the first question is it fiction or nonfiction? And what is the answer?
It is fiction.
It's fiction. That's the easy part. The second question you ask about a book is, what's the genre? What kind of book is it? Is it a Western? Is it a comedy? How would you answer that question for this?
It's not easy to answer this question for me. It is a thriller. Yeah. Some people call it science fiction. I don't think so. It has some science fictional element in the book. But aside from this, it's not a science fiction. It is an action adventure. There is romantic story in there. I just wanted to write a book that would be interesting for me to read. And I had in mind some books that are interesting, some books that would take time to read. I wanted just a book that you start reading, you want to turn pages.
I know, so there's this genre of libertarian science fiction, which doesn't really, it has libertarian themes, as you said, it has science fictional elements, but libertarian science fiction as a genre tends to be either utopian or dystopian, and it's, look how bad things are, you know, if you change one line in the Constitution or something like that. That's not really what's going on here, right? And yet you do get the libertarian themes across. How do you blend? You want to be entertained if you're writing for yourself or for other people, but how do you get across the messages and the themes and the conflicts that you want to resolve?
The main thing I wanted, the main thing I was afraid when I wrote it, I didn't want this to become a lesson or moral story or lecture. I wanted this to be entertaining, the book, and interesting to read. But of course, I wanted to. I had some ideas that I wanted to explain and to write in this book. So the way I did it, it just set up, there is a science fictional element that I mentioned. Suppose that there is something that, a new procedure, that government developed a new procedure and the government can come to you and take something that belongs to you and say it is in the interest of all the people.
Like my property or something?
Something like this. I can be more specific if you insist.
I insist.
Okay. I didn't give you a lot of fight. The government comes to you and take part of your intellect.
My brain.
Part of your, it's not physical brain, it's energy.
Like
that
the
is
software,
in your,
not the hardware.
Right,
okay.
right.
Like
so
my memories, my thoughts.
Right, right. No, well, it's energy. You will be able to reconstruct it in several months. And normally, under normal circumstances, you will be back to the way you were. But this energy will be able to use for other better purposes.
Well, wait, so how does this work? So do I become stupid for a while?
Not really. It's like you you will feel like you were drunk or something, like you were after a party.
Like a day?
Maybe a day or two, and then your IQ will go down for a few months. But later on, eventually, you will come to the same level as you were before.
But am I still guaranteed my job while I have my low IQ?
You guarantee. I didn't discuss it in the book, but yes, you can keep your job.
Okay, so government comes to me, takes a part of my intellect,
yes,
and goes and does good things with it. Gives it to doctors to make them better, to scientists, to politicians, to athletes, not so much.
Well, athletes, do they need, unless they play basketball, do they need really?
Okay, so maybe not so much on the athletes, but
Yeah, politicians, writers, scientists, people for whom intellect, maybe
okay,
maybe
can I-
they
can
will
I-
discover new cure.
but what? No, but some even athletes. If you get a smarter player, can I petition to get some of this from other people? Is this like a product I can get
Yes.
on the free market as
Yeah.
well, or is it just government?
No, it's just government. Government has full monopoly on this, and there are certain lists you have to get on the list so that this procedure.
So I have to be
will-
like politically connected, and
Yes, yes.
how do I make my case? Is it really hard to make the list? Is that basically the idea?
It's
Like
at
for me,
the beginning,
so-
you know. It's
Like,
at
what
the
if I only
begin-
need it for like an hour or something? There's no.
to pass an exam or
Yeah.
something? No,
No dice.
not in this. At least not in the first volume. Maybe later on you will have some suitcase. You'll be able to do it.
So, the government comes, takes a bit of my intellect,
Right.
without my permission, obviously, because if
Right.
if I allow it, then there's no story, no interest, right?
Well, some people don't argue with this. But some people may. But you know, the government makes this decision, makes this call.
And they can decide
It's
how much
done.
they take from who, or is there a vote? Or
Yes.
how does it?
Yeah, but like it's done in a normal democratic society, there are representatives, the people that are scientists.
It's set in America.
It
right?
is set in America.
It's basically present-day America, maybe a couple years
Yes.
in the future,
Right,
So it's not like some crazy democratic
Right.
institute. It's regular republic.
Yeah,
people
but
vote.
it's just, you know, I don't want to concentrate too much on setup because I don't really care about this. I mean, it is a procedure to start the action in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And then something happens during this procedure. And family is forced to fight the government. And that's what the book is about.
So that's why it defies.
It's not that, you know, I don't want to mislead the future readers. It's not that there is a long discussion what procedure is. It's kind of, by the way, this is what's happening.
Now,
Does it remind you of something?
what would you like it to remind me of? You don't have a third question to take on?
Well, it is, of course, I never mention income tax in the book. But this
Or
is,
until this point in the interview.
or until this point of the interview. But it is about income tax.
So the brain tax
Yes.
is a metaphor for the income
Yes.
tax?
Yes. It just to make to people clearer that income tax is not necessarily such a good thing.
But isn't it more like a wealth tax or something, or a property tax? Why is it income?
Income tax because it is the same as brain tax.
How? Why? Because that's how much I thought for the past year or something? I need another year to get back up? Or
Well, the idea is that what is your reaction? What do you think? You read this book.
Yeah.
But what is your reaction when you read that somebody takes part of your intellect? Is it appalling? Is it
Yes,
okay?
it's
Maybe it makes
disgusting.
sense. It's disgusting,
Yeah.
right? You don't feel the same way. Normally, people at least don't feel the same way about income tax.
It's true.
But actually, it is practically the same thing. Because if you think about it, most of the people, how they produce their income, they produce it by their body, by their intellect. There is no other way, practically, unless
okay, yeah, you write stuff,
some
you produce,
exceptions.
you
Right, you
entertain,
go to work, you write
Yeah.
programs. You may hate your job, but you have to use your brain
yeah,
to make money.
yeah.
And
you
then
use your body too.
you use your body, yes, right.
Yeah.
And then somebody comes in and tells you, give me half of what you made. It's practically the same thing.
But how can a society function without taxes?
Well, there are several answers to this. The main answer that I think is not to answer this question at all. Because suppose you're killing people because it's good for society, or taking their left eyes or something, you wouldn't ask this question how the society will function without it, even if this is really necessary for the society to function, right? Suppose
Because it's evil in and of itself.
right, because it's
And it shouldn't be
immoral,
done.
it's evil, it shouldn't be done. You have to think about
There's
other
something
ways.
more important than just maintaining society.
Exactly. and income tax is evil. But I can still, society can function on by other means. 10 years income tax. I'll answer this question even though it's not that important. The important thing that it's immoral and the question shouldn't be asked. But given that, I'll answer this question. Income tax is about $1 trillion a year. That's about how much we pay for the war in Iraq. It's about for 3 years, $3 trillion or something. So we could have well done without income tax. Also, if we abolish income tax, then the government level will be about the same level as it was 10 years ago, which was pretty big government. It would be able to function at that level.
Okay, but why an income tax? Is a sales tax okay? Is that different from a brain tax? Is there no?
I don't like any tax because it's force. You're using force against an individual to get this tax. But at least sales tax, it's an indirect tax. It's a tax when you do certain activity. And income tax, it's direct tax that you're sitting at home. You think that nobody can reach you. You're not doing anything. You're drinking wine or drinking water or, watching TV. Somebody comes in and tells you with a gun, you have to pay. It's a violation. It's as disgusting as if somebody would come in and tell you have to share energy of your brain because there are better purposes for the society.
So it's the direct taxation element that's the same between the brain tax and the income tax. Are there other direct taxes in America today?
Property tax is a direct taxation. The government comes to you because you have this property. The problem with it's not only direct taxation, it also has this social security number. So it's also a question of privacy. Once government has social security number, the government begins to collect information about you. And it's already, there was Real ID Act passed in 05 by the Congress that there should be federal ID. The government...
So you're not a huge proponent of the Real ID Act. You're not in favor of that? No. Okay. What about like immigrants and stuff? How would you... I mean, presumably the Real ID Act is to prevent people from hiring people who shouldn't have been in the country in the first place, that kind of thing. Don't people need to have papers to get around?
They can have papers. They can have state papers. They don't have to have
state
federal.
ID?
Yeah. I am anti-federalist. I don't mind if certain states would have income tax, by the way. I'm sure income tax will disappear once there is no federal income tax. I'm sure state income tax will disappear. And the same with ID. It's okay if state has ID, whatever rules state have. I'm a statistician by education, so I like when people have some play, several possibilities, like 50 plus states in which people can do different things and figure out what works and
there's
what
some
doesn't.
competition.
Exactly.
But with the country, who is America competing with, right? You're an American. Where are you going to go, right? It's
exactly.
Not like
in state, I can move to another state. In the United States, it's a big move to another country. Plus, I don't think United States is a bad country, regardless of of what I'm saying and what I'm complaining. I want to improve this country. I still believe that it's one of the freest, the best countries in the world.
We should point out that you were born in and lived in the Soviet Union for much of your life, and then you immigrated with your family, including one very precocious and handsome 5-year-old son, to America about 28 years ago, right?
Yes.
And the Soviet Union, presumably there were papers there, like real ID, federal ID, not federal, but just national ID cards you have to carry around, right?
Yes, passports. Right. You have to go even to your library and show passport.
It's not a different library card, it's the same state
Well,
passport.
they'll give you library card, but you have to show passport before they,
As opposed to a utility bill here.
Right.
But
it's getting here. I'm sure you will have to. Last time I went to a bank, they asked me for my driver's license, which is strange.
Why is that strange? Do you drive?
Well, they have their own cards. They know me, but show me your driver. And what is your social security number, by the way? which is a tax number, social security number. Come on.
Yeah.
It's an income tax number.
Were there numbers on Russian passports, Soviet passports?
Yeah, there were numbers, but
not
nobody
taxes?
remembered their numbers. They would just show passport.
see.
Here, everybody knows their social security.
Was there an income tax there?
Yes, and you know what is interesting? It wasn't as insulting in Russia
How can
as
that
here.
be? Why?
Because in Russia, there was no private enterprise. Everybody would work, would
Okay.
work for somebody else. Factory, university, institute. You work for some company, and you get salary, and you get your rubles and go home. It's not that you have to fill out. You're already taken care of.
It's like a payroll tax like we have here, right? You don't really,
Right,
you don't
right,
fill out any more paperwork. It's
right.
just,
And of course, you don't know, you don't know how much they already took it away, or what is this game, because prices are fixed, salary are fixed. Somebody decided. It's not market that decided what is your salary, so to speak. Somebody decided that your salary will be 120 rubles and 10 rubles will be your taxes. Okay. You don't even look at it.
so was that good?
It's not as insulting as here around April 15, when you start feeling all this
Yeah,
ridiculous
yeah.
and should I deduct this,
Yeah.
or maybe I shouldn't, or what is, or this is law, is this
So
income?
but
It's
if
like,
what you want is to get rid of the income tax in America, the federal income tax,
yes.
and there wasn't much of a federal income tax in the Soviet Union, isn't it possible that what we would end up with when we get rid of it is something like the Soviet Union, where it's just replace it with a payroll tax, right? Or what's the big deal? What's the
Well, it's a problem in Soviet Union. They had much greater problem. That's why I'm saying America is still free country. They had much greater problem than income tax, believe
see.
me. And here, of course, we are moving there, and that's
Where?
why to the level of Soviet Union. That's why sometimes I feel that I came from the future of this country. We are certainly moving. I can see during these 28 years that I'm here, we are moving in the direction where I came from Soviet Union. But we are not there. And getting rid of income tax will put the country to the road of real freedom.
actually in 1980 when we came here? That's when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, right?
Yes. Maybe a year ago.
How interesting. We invaded Afghanistan, if I remember correctly.
It's an interesting, yeah, it confirms exactly my thought that we are moving back to the future.
Interesting. So Publicani, the word itself sounds Italian. Is it an Italian word?
It's Latin. It's Latin for tax collectors, tax farmers, people who collect
Tax
taxes.
farmers?
Farmers. People. Think of them, of
What do you-
Publicani, as IRS agents during biblical times,
Biblical, which part of the Bible? It's a long Bible.
during Jesus Christ.
Okay. Okay. But now, a tax farmer, what do you plant as a tax farmer to get taxes?
You get taxes. It's a technical term. That's the same way IRS is an agency between people and the government, so to speak.
Yeah.
IRS collect taxes and passes them to the government, and something stays in IRS. The same way, Publicani. One of the followers of Jesus Christ was a publican. Matthew, I believe.
Oh, yeah,
Matthew is a
even
publican.
right, yeah.
And so when at that time, at Jesus Christ's time, people had right attitude toward IRS agents,
Which was?
which was they would spit on them, they would call them swine, which is very strong expression, especially for Israelis. They wouldn't let them testify in local courts.
They
wouldn't
spit on
let
Matthew?
them. They wouldn't let them marry their daughters. So
Wait, what?
I wouldn't.
They wouldn't let them marry their own daughters?
Yes,
Why would-
because they're bad people. They're
Why would they let
Publicanis.
anyone else marry their own daughters?
They want their daughters to get married.
Oh, they don't let their own daughters marry a Publicani.
Right.
They don't let the Publicani marry a Publicani daughter.
No, right. Their own daughters.
Oh, I
They
see.
don't
They're
want
just
their
they're just
daughters
outcasts. They're
married.
just-
Right.
oh, I see.
So it's no surprise when Jesus Christ called him a friend and said a couple of kind words that this poor publican dropped everything, all his great income, and followed Jesus Christ.
Ah,
Because Jesus Christ really treated him as an equal, which was unheard of. at that time. Nowadays, we treat all IRS agents as equal.
And that's a bad thing, or it's just a
that's,
symptom?
That's progress. That's a symptom, I guess.
Interesting. Excuse me. So, the getting back to the genre thing, it kind of comes full circle. There's a lot of actually religious fiction in this book, not just science fiction. There's, not to give stuff away, but there's one of the things you do in this book is you answer some 1,000-year-old questions, or at least posit some answers. For example, where was Jesus, right?
Right.
Between the time he was born, which we're familiar with, and when he was like 30 years old, when we're also familiar with. Where was he for those 3 decades?
Yeah, that was an interesting question for me, by the way, because it's like he showed up from nowhere and started doing his miracles. And actually he was, great debater. He was a great scholar, religious scholar. He was very distinguished person that clearly there was a lot of education behind him. How could it come up from nowhere? And there is an answer, and I discuss it in this book, that he was trained and well prepared for this. Also, what is interesting, and the way why religion is discussed in this book, is because if you study it, if you look at it, at least what I found, and it's not, the book is not about religion, but it's maybe 1 or 2 chapters there. What I found that the main message of religion, of Judeo-Christian religion, that's sent to us through these centuries, is individual freedom, that we have to value individual freedom. And that's the only thing that people, if anything, they should learn. It's not that hidden. If you start looking and you start discussing, checking Bible or Torah, it's clear there. Jews, by the way, often call their God the God of freedom.
But how can that be if Jesus Christ was friendly with the Publicani?
Well, he was friendly with everybody, and that's part of it. He kind of recognized that there is every person, not nowadays, people don't recognize it, that every person has a soul, that they're equal in this regard, that this soul belongs to this person. You cannot take it away, you cannot part of it away. You cannot take fruit of the labor of this soul from the person. You cannot take his property away. And Jesus Christ recognized it. And
how?
that's,
Give me an example. What did he say that a soul, because that sounds very similar to, the intellect tax or the brain tax, right? It's a part of your soul. It's easier to imagine a brain tax as being a soul tax than an income tax.
I'll give you an example. When politicians nowadays are talking about rich and poor, and when they talk about rich, what do they say? They don't, they didn't ask for this tax cut. They don't need this tax cut. They're rich, they're this, they're that. They don't recognize that these rich folks, they're also people, they have their soul. That their soul is equal. You cannot, and the soul and the property and the body of this person belongs to that person. You cannot even start discussing whether it's good or bad for the society to come to him and take something away from him.
So you're saying, suppose society decided, let's put a huge tax, 90% tax on Bill Gates.
Yes.
And the discussions would be, well, what would we use that money for? Should it be towards education or towards transportation? Or should it be 80% on Bill Gates and another 80% on Buffett? Right? Those kinds of questions is what we would be talking about. But what you're saying we should be saying first is, hey, Bill Gates is human.
It's his body. It's his responsible.
We have no right to just take it.
No right.
Because it's so direct and specific to him.
Right.
Whereas if we maybe say anybody who wants to purchase gas has to pay a gas tax, or anybody who wants to import steel has to pay a duty. That's a different way.
That's a different way.
Because there's no soul involved.
And by the way, in your hypothetical example with Bill Gates, there is a bill right now that so-called millionaire tax. People who make more than $1 million, they should pay a certain tax, they say 1% or something. They
Yeah.
start, of course, something
Small.
right? But and it goes for something very good, like education for veterans' children or something, you know.
Right.
And that's exactly the same thing. It's a different grade, different scale yet, but it's exactly the same thing. As if we can sit here and discuss whether we can take this from those people or we cannot.
So it becomes an important duty of ours as citizens to try to figure out where that line is between indirect and direct. Like a millionaire's tax is not really direct, like a Bill Gates tax. It's closer towards anybody who whatever does something like buys yachts.
Right, but it's still income tax, and therefore it is direct tax. You have to know that he made $1 million or more.
Mm-hmm.
What's his social security number? Knock, knock.
What was your primary purpose in writing this book, and how long did it take to do it?
Primary purpose. At the beginning, I wrote script. I wanted to make a movie, and I wanted you to star in this.
As a matter of fact, if you check out this, the cover, if we get another close-up, the cover has a picture of me right there. It was drawn by somebody when the movie was being still produced. So yeah, if it ever does become a movie, hopefully they'll find someone who was my age back then to play it.
I'll rewrite the script, and I kept rewriting it. That was, because it took me a long time to write it. And first, the kids were about 10, 11 years old, and then 12, 13, and so on. So I'll rewrite it if they make a movie. And I wanted to make a movie, but I wanted to make a movie that would be interesting, and I wanted you and your sister to star in this movie. And it took me a while, and you criticized me a lot, and I am grateful for this. Maybe a couple of years, and then I realized that it's not easy to make a movie by a single person. Audience doesn't see it, but even such simple interview, we are two sitting at this table. There are 3 people in this room that are taping it.
Yeah.
I took some courses. I went to New York Film Academy. I thought still I could do it if I have enough energy and stuff. But I wasn't able to.
Thank you very much. So the book is available on Amazon.com.
Yes.
And people can buy it basically through any bookstore. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
I hope you can give me a ride home. Thank you for joining us for Hardfire.
Live free or die.
Hardfire is funded in part by the Libertarian Party of New York. www.ny.lp.org